Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Today I'm just going to talk a little bit about social perception and self-categorization in our daily interactions. This presentation is for Psychology 512 at Liberty University. And before we discuss and jump into the presentation, I just want to note a couple of things for you. So first of all, I would like you all to know that the citations for all where I got all this information will be in the description box below, as well as the two questions that I will pose at the end of this video for our class discussion. The three sources that I'll be using are Theories in Social Psychology, which is one of our textbooks. This is the main source that I got most of this information from. Social Psychology, and also there's an article that I will be referencing in a moment. It is called More Than Meets the Eye, Split-Second Social Perception by Freeman and Johnson. So let's get into the presentation. So first of all, I'd like to ask you all a question. How many of you have ever had a moment when a complete stranger walks into the room and in an instant your brain creates an opinion of this person? You may not have talked to them, you may have just seen them, and they walk in and instantly you have a feeling or a thought about them. Most of us have had this experience, and most of us all possess a unique paradigm of life experiences, of different ways of processing and thinking, which contributes into this opinion that we form. The article, More Than Meets the Eye, Split-Second Social Perception by Freeman and Johnson, discusses this issue. So the original idea was that we kind of just, that it was a very almost superficial issue, but this article goes into just the deeper things that affect each of our paradigms, which affect that decision that we make about those people that walk into the room, or people that walk into the room, or when we walk into the room, people's perception of us. Just a little short excerpt from the article is this. As this integration unfolds, multiple hidden category activations may impact perception without being observed in an explicit perceptual judgments. So this is a very complicated issue. We all know that we are very complicated beings, but they're beginning to do research on what goes into creating these opinions on the spot. And it is a lot deeper than many of us may have thought. And this is important to the categorization of ourselves, because the way we see others will affect how we treat them and the way we interact in our communities. And also it really is affected by the way that we see ourselves as well. So first of all, self-categorization theory, and I'm getting this from the text, in a nutshell, is that people tend to place themselves into categories. That's pretty simple, right? We all have groups that we belong to and we claim membership to. These categories will often create a distinction between those who are members and not members. So when that person walks in the room, maybe they're not a member of the group that we associate with, such as these groups can be gender, profession, different things such as that. According to the text, this is Theories in Psychology, self-categorization may thus be defined as cognitive self-placing in a collective category. It defines membership in social groups, some of which are assigned, such as gender, and some are chosen, such as profession. It is important to note that these categories that we are placed in must be confirmed by the individual. What that means is I have to agree that I am in these categories. Like, it has to resonate with me is not the right word, but I have to confirm that. I have to be partner to that. For a moment, let's just rewind back to our high school days. Stereotypically, if we think about this picture of the lunchroom and all these different groups, all these different people kind of off in their own little friend cliques, we can see a picture of this theory. For example, cheerleaders, um, athletes, nerds. No, cheerleader's not going to realize or know that she's not or is in that group. Like a cheerleader knows she belongs to that group, right? It's pretty obvious to everybody and also to her herself. It is confirmed by the member. Another point that we need to think about is social identification. In its simplest definition, social identification denotes that a given individual perceives his or her group and his or her membership thereof in some form or another as meaningful, desired, and important. And I'm going to give an example. This is from the text. Social identification consists of 7 different theoretically distinguishable components. I have kind of put questions to these to help me understand and define these and define the definition. So I'll just read to you the 7 with the questions that I've come up with them. So the first category is self-categorization. Where do we place ourselves? What group do we associate with or put ourselves in? The second one is evaluation. How do we see this given social identity? How do we view it? Importance. What value do we attribute to this group membership? Attachment and interdependence. How deeply involved in this identity or membership, and how do I perceive my oneness with the group? Social embeddedness. How is this social identity implicated in our daily lives and interaction with others? Behavioral involvement. How dependent are my daily routines on my social identity? Content and meaning. In what ways do my beliefs and actions show membership to the group, and how does my role in the community show my agreement with the group values? Okay, so a good example of this is for the last 2 days, I have been at a social work conference for work. Now, like most professional conferences, they get you excited about your field. You feel like you're a member of this group. They encourage you to join the professional association. They talk about the challenges and give trainings for the profession that you're in. This is a group that I consider myself a member of. I work in the social work field full time, and I, at some level or another, attribute value to my work in the field. And I see myself as embedded in the community of social workers. So that's an example. Now, with all of this in mind, one might wonder, since we are all such unique individuals, can you belong to more than one group? So the answer is yes. So multiple social categories, and I got this from Theories in Social Psychology. This brings us to the point that many of us can have membership to multiple groups at the same time. For example, I could be categorized into the social groups or groups of social worker, Christian. I consider myself a Christian and involved in a Christian community, and I am female. Those are all different groups that are kind of, you could consider yourself a member of. I can consider myself a member of. Are those the only groups that I see myself as involved in or as part of? No. There are others. This being involved simultaneously with multiple groups kind of gives each person the unique flavor that they have, combined with their experience in life and the things that they've gone through and the different areas that they are involved in now, gives us each a very unique paradigm. So it's important to note that we aren't just locked into one thing, and we all kind of know that, but just as we're talking about membership and categorizing ourselves in a certain way, we have to know that it's not just one-dimensional. So an interesting theory that has to do with all of this is situated cognition. The previously mentioned theories, like the ones that we have just talked about, the social categorization theory, are rigid in nature and may be categories that last and have less ability to change over time. So it's kind of like you remember and you stay. That's a very simplistic summary of that. Situated cognition can loosely be described as the categories that we place on ourselves can be fluid throughout life and are formed by our thoughts, experiences, perception of others, and others' perception of us. So this theory basically says that we're changing beings throughout our seasons of life, and our membership and association with certain groups or categories changes and can change over time with experience and with the way people see us. It's got a few different facets. Here is an excerpt from the text, Theories in Social Psychology. This is on page 241. This implies that if people learn about the categories from a variety of different episodes, and if that category knowledge becomes grounded in situational knowledge, then different situations should activate different information about the category. So it's a more flexible view of our categories and the groups to which we belong. So I'm thinking about all the different groups that we belong to, all the different values that we have. And then thinking about the news and the things that we see often reported. We know that there's a lot of conflict between groups. It may be groups that we belong in, it may be groups that are outside of ourselves, but we see a lot of conflict in our culture and hostility at times. So social psychology, the text, discusses contact hypothesis, which is basically a hypothesis that states that contact interaction between groups that typically have hostility towards each other will reduce intergroup conflict. So of course it has to be positive contact, but like that interaction will reduce that. Which the text also discusses that intergroup friendships, where these individuals have equal playing field and participate in meaningful interactions, can be one of the best ways to facilitate intergroup interactions, and and then it would support the decrease in hostility towards these two groups. So if you can get these groups to be friends, to interact in a meaningful way where all individuals were equal, we would see a decrease in the hostility between these two groups. So what does that mean for us? So that, to me, says that we need to seek out friendships outside of our group. Let's just not stick to our group. Let's maybe be open-minded to being friends with or caring about somebody who has a completely different opinion from us and who we may perceive or see as somebody completely outside of the category that we live in, the world we live in. And so it's kind of getting outside of our little boxes to facilitate just a creation of a more healthy community. So my two concluding questions are, number one, the theories in social psychology discusses the idea of social identification, which we have already talked about, which discusses how we place ourselves in groups. What biblical references or experiences remind you to appreciate others outside of your own assigned group? The second question is the same text, Theories in Social Psychology, discuss the concept of situated cognition. This is the essence of this idea is the fluidity of our group membership throughout our lives, dependent on our experiences and context. What different groups have you been assigned to or a part of that has changed over the course of your life? And where were you then and where are you now? So I am excited to see what you guys share and hear some of your stories. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. And thank you for watching.